Stay away. She's marrying a millionaire, and your presence will just ruin her big day. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, illuminating the dark room at midnight. 3 days before my younger sister Chloe's lavish destination wedding, the woman who gave birth to me casually erased me. No phone call. No explanation. Just a digital eviction notice from a mother who had spent my entire life treating me like a second-class citizen compared to my golden child sister. But the cruelty didn't stop at the text. Right beneath it came a picture of the groom. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. I froze for 5 agonizing seconds, and then I laughed out loud. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a sharp, disbelieving sound that echoed off the empty kitchen walls. Because my mother had absolutely no idea who the groom actually was. For months, she had bragged to everyone in our social circle about Chloe's fairy tale romance with a high-flying, self-made multimillionaire named Julian Vance. She sent out glossy updates, boasted about the guest list, and lorded the luxury status over my head like a crown she was born to wear. She thought she had won the jackpot. She thought she had secured a lifetime ticket to elite society. She had no clue that the man standing proudly in that photograph, smiling beside my sister in a custom tuxedo, wasn't a wealthy heir at all. I knew his real name. I knew his real background. And most importantly, I knew the devastating financial secret he was hiding. My mother thought she was cutting me out to protect her precious wedding from my ruinous presence. In reality, she was walking my sister straight into a trap, and she had just handed me the front row ticket to watch it all collapse. What would you do if you discovered the dream wedding you were banned from was actually a ticking time bomb? Growing up in our house meant learning 2 very different rules of survival. If you were Chloe, the rules didn't exist. Everything was paved with gold, praise, and indulgence. If you were me, the rules were strict, invisible, and designed to keep you out of the spotlight. Our mother was a woman obsessed with image, status, and wealth. She lived vicariously through Chloe, treating her like a prized porcelain doll destined to marry into royalty. Every dance class, private tutor, and luxury vacation was funneled into Chloe's future. I, on the other hand, learned early on to stand on my own 2 feet. While Chloe was groomed for elite society, I buried myself in textbooks, working hard to carve out an independent, honest life. I became a senior corporate compliance auditor, a job built on facts, verification, and exposing hidden numbers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. Yet, in my mother's eyes, my stability was an embarrassment. Because I didn't chase superficial glamour or billionaires, I was cast aside as the family disappointment. For years, I accepted my place on the outer edge of the family circle. I endured the constant comparisons, the barbed remarks, and being uninvited from milestones because I didn't fit the glossy aesthetic. But standing there in the dark kitchen with that text message glowing on my phone, something inside me snapped. She thought uninviting me was a punishment. She didn't realize that my background in compliance meant I was uniquely qualified to see right through the elaborate illusion she had bought into. The initial sting of being discarded just 72 hours before a major family event burned hot in my chest. Most people would have thrown their phone across the room, poured a glass of wine, and spent the entire weekend drowning in self-pity, wondering why they weren't good enough for their own flesh and blood. For a brief moment, I considered letting it go. Let them have their expensive weekend. Let my mother bask in her delusions of grandeur. But then I looked at the groom's face again. I realized this wasn't just about a petty family slight or an unceremonious uninviting. This was about a calculated deception that was about to destroy my sister's life, orchestrated by a mother too blindfolded by dollar signs to see the danger. Instead of staying home to sulk, I made a quiet decision. I packed a single overnight bag, booked a flight to the same luxury coastal resort city under the radar, and checked into a quiet hotel 10 minutes away from the wedding venue. I wasn't going there to crash the ceremony or cause a petty scene. I was going there because my professional instincts as a compliance auditor told me that a multi-million-dollar illusion built on lies was about to collapse, and I needed a front row seat when it did. Stepping out of the air-conditioned terminal and into the humid coastal heat, I took a deep breath. The resort was everything my mother had dreamed of, palms swaying in the ocean breeze, white-gloved valets parking imported sports cars, and massive floral arrangements lining the entrance of the five-star hotel where the rehearsal dinner was already underway. From a distance, the scene looked like something straight out of a glossy magazine. Security guards in crisp tuxedos stood at every entrance, and wedding banners bearing Chloe and Julian's initials fluttered proudly against the sunset. My mother had spared no expense, or rather, she believed Julian's family had spared no expense. That was the funny thing about illusions. They look flawless until you know where to look for the cracks. As a senior compliance auditor, my entire career was built on tracing paper trails, unmasking shell companies, and catching high-stakes fraudsters who wore expensive suits and flashed winning smiles. 6 months ago, my firm handled a complex forensic review for a major financial institution that had been scammed out of millions by a slick, charismatic operator using a string of aliases and fabricated asset portfolios. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through an encrypted archive file, and zoomed in on a photograph from that old case file. The sharp jawline, the distinctive diamond-encrusted cufflinks, the faint scar just beneath the left earlobe. It wasn't just a resemblance. The man standing at the altar with my sister, the billionaire heir my mother was bragging about, was the exact same fugitive who had vanished just before federal regulators could freeze his accounts. He wasn't Julian Vance. He was a professional con artist, and my family was walking right into a catastrophe. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the resort's private courtyard where the rehearsal dinner was kicking off. I stayed in the shadows near the perimeter hedge, watching the elite crowd mingle with champagne flutes catching the string lights. Then I saw him. He was walking out of a private side corridor, adjusting his cuffs, looking every bit the untouchable billionaire. Without thinking, I stepped out from behind the foliage and blocked his path. He stopped dead in his tracks, his smile freezing instantly. The color drained from his face as his eyes locked onto mine. For a second, the charismatic facade completely shattered. "You," he whispered, looking around frantically to make sure no one else was listening. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing, Julian," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Or should I call you by your real name? How long did you think you could keep this going before the federal warrants caught up to the guest list?" Panic flashed in his eyes. He took a quick step closer, lowering his voice into a desperate hiss. "Listen to me. You stay quiet. If you ruin this for me, if you ruin this for your sister, I swear I will make sure your family blames you for everything. Your mother already hates you. Do you think anyone here will believe an uninvited outcast over a successful businessman?" He thought he could threaten me. He thought his polished suit and empty bluster still had power over someone who spent years dealing with cold, hard facts. "My mother chose this monster," I replied, staring right into his terrified eyes. "And tomorrow, she's going to find out exactly what kind of prize she bought into." The wedding day arrived with the suffocating weight of a Hollywood production. The cliffside glass chapel was breathtaking, draped in thousands of white imported orchids, filled with high society guests decked out in designer gowns and tailored suits. My mother stood near the front aisle, beaming with an intoxicating sense of ultimate victory, her head held high as she greeted the elite crowd. At the altar, the groom stood tall and composed, though I could see the rigid tension in his posture. When the heavy wooden doors swung open and the wedding march began, Chloe stepped out looking like a tragic fairy tale princess, gliding toward a disaster she couldn't possibly see coming. Just as the officiant cleared his throat to begin the ceremony, I stepped out from the back row and started walking steadily down the center aisle. The murmurs rippled instantly through the pews. Heads whipped around. My mother spun around, her face instantly contorting from royal grace into pure, venomous fury. She rushed up the aisle, grabbing my arm with nails digging into my skin, her voice shaking with rage. "What are you doing here? I explicitly told you to stay away. You are ruining her big day." I didn't yell. I didn't pull away. I simply looked past her at the altar, where the groom had gone completely pale, before turning my gaze straight back to my mother. "You told me my presence would ruin her big day," I said clearly, loud enough for the front rows to hear every syllable. "But trust me, Mom. Letting her marry a criminal who is about to lose everything will ruin it a lot more. Before security could lunge forward, I unzipped my leather folder, pulled out the official federal indictment records and asset seizure warrants, and held them up for everyone to see. The chapel erupted into absolute chaos. Murmurs turned into shrieks as guests stood up to get a better look. My mother lunged forward to swat the papers out of my hand, but she was too late. I stepped up and handed the binder directly to the best man, who happened to be one of Julian's shady associates, and laid out the cold, unvarnished truth. The federal warrants, the alias documentation, the frozen asset trails from my old audit files. The groom didn't wait for the evidence to be read aloud. He turned on his heel, shoved past the altar flowers, and bolted out the side exit, abandoning the multi-million-dollar illusion in a matter of seconds. My mother collapsed onto a velvet pew, her social standing evaporating before her eyes, while Chloe stood frozen at the altar, staring in horror at the empty space where her fairy tale life had just disintegrated. It took months for the dust to settle. My family dynamic was shattered beyond repair, but the toxic spell was broken. Chloe finally saw the truth about the superficial world our mother built, and she thanked me for saving her from financial ruin. Today, my life is quiet, honest, and entirely my own. I didn't write this story for revenge. I wrote it because sometimes the greatest act of love you can offer is refusing to let the people you care about live inside a lie.